Thanks for tuning in to No Wine in No Time. I'm your host Dave, and today we're going to talk about a red wine by the name of Bergerac. Now, wines that come from France, remember, are always named by the town that they come from. And Bergerac is the northernmost appellation in southwest France. It's right on the Dordogne River, and it's actually a neighbor of Bordeaux and the town of Castillon. Now, Bergerac is famous for culinary dishes from duck and goose and products that come from that, like frogois. But it's also very famous for a literary character named Cyrano de Bergerac. And what's interesting about Cyrano de Bergerac is this particular wine can draw some very interesting parallels from Cyrano himself. So let's talk about Cyrano de Bergerac. Cyrano was a member of the French army. He was a very talented duelist, but he also was an aspiring poet and also a musician, a very complex and very accomplished man. But Cyrano suffered from one single flaw, and that was he had a giant nose. And as the story goes, it affected Cyrano so much he thought, who would ever love him even with all these many talents? Now here's the parallel with this particular Bergerac wine. We think about it being a neighbor of Castillon and Bordeaux, but it technically is from southwest France. That's why it gets a little bit of a stepchild mentality. However, when we look at Bergerac, there are so many incredible attributes about wine grapes that grow in that particular region. And the first thing is, French wine laws limit the yield in Bergerac to just 3 tons per acre. So think about that. When we talk about having a limited yield, what's happening is in, say, June of any year, we're going through the vineyards and we're doing a green harvest, a dry harvest. We're actually cutting grape clusters off of the vines so that the remaining fruit will have such exceptional quality and get 100% of the energy from the grapevine. That produces incredible fruit. So by law, Bergerac wines can only have 3 tons per acre. Let's put that in perspective. If we go to California, we have anywhere from 6 to 8 to 12 tons per acre. So incredibly beautiful fruit in that particular area. Red wines that come from this particular town must be blends, at least 2 of the following. First is Merlot, second is Cabernet Sauvignon, third is Cabernet Franc, and the fourth is a wine called Fair Cervadu, which you probably haven't heard of, but it's one from that particular area. Additionally, we can also blend Malbec, which is called Côte in the French language. And finally, we have one called Merelle. So any of those grapes can be used in this particular blend. Also, when we look at this area, the soil in Bergerac is almost identical to Saint-Emilion in Bordeaux. We have calcareous pebbles, which add a significant minerality and just a beauty to the wine that we don't get in some other appellations, even within Bordeaux itself. So much like Cyrano de Bergerac, the Bergerac wine may suffer from an inferiority complex because it's outside of Bordeaux, but for those of you watching, I would go look for a Bergerac wine. The value is incredible, and it presents itself very much like an elegant Bordeaux wine. So let's take a look at the one we have today. This is from Chateau Michel de Montagny, and this is a 2018 Bergerac. This particular wine is predominantly Merlot with a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc blended in. So let's take a look at it, this particular wine, and see what we might expect from Bergerac wines in general. So the first thing we can look at is the color of the wine. We see that the wine is very dense, very opaque, with just slight purplish kind of essences around the edges. If we swirl to liberate some of the aromas, we notice wafting out of the glasses is almost just a slight bit of perfume. I get some violets and some fresh kind of purple flowers, almost hyacinth, and a little background of plum, just a slight bit of toasted oak, and even a little bit of black raspberry. So let's pass it across the palate and see what we think. This Bergerac wine is absolutely delicious. It is very Bordeaux-esque. In other words, on the front side of the palate, we get a little bit of cherry and plum flavors. Mid-palate, we can feel the drying aspect of the tannins, a little bit of leather coming in, and a beautiful tobacco-y finish on the end. This is really an exceptional example of a Bergerac wine, and one that you should certainly continue. So, as the weeks progress, we're going to continue to explore different wine concepts. So I ask you to come back next time, because soon you'll know wine in no time.